Okay, it's going to be a review of SummerSlam 1994. So going all the way back to August 29th, 1994 from Chicago, the United Center. So yeah, this was like the first big event at the United Center, even before the Bulls ever played a game at the United Center. You know, Jordan wouldn't even play a game at the United Center until he came back that March. So it wasn't until like late March of 1995 where he officially started playing at the United Center, and it looks great. United Center looks great, but I was always more of a fan of Chicago Stadium. Chicago Stadium, just there is nothing like it in terms of the electricity, in terms of the crowd reaction. But yeah, I'll say this: United Center was like, you know, Chicago's version of Madison Square Garden. It just looked beautiful on television with all those lights, and it's just such a big arena. So they did 23,300 in attendance. The pay-per-view buy rate was actually 300,000. You know, that's not bad for 1994. You know, I think that's a higher number than the Rumble. I think the Rumble did maybe 290 or maybe 250, somewhere in the between 250 and 290. So it's definitely up from the Rumble. It's up from King of the Ring. And it's even 50,000 more than SummerSlam 1993. So yeah, I would definitely say I think the Bret Hart and Owen Hart feud, I think it was something that a lot of casual fans, just people in general, can relate to. You know, from having fights with their family members and, you know, things of that nature. Plus, I think there was a lot of intrigue with the return of the Undertaker and the fake Undertaker. I was actually a huge fan of the evil Superman versus good Superman. Scene from Superman 3. So, you know, I don't think the Undertaker versus Undertaker thing is the worst thing in the world, but I'll get to it when we get to the main event. So, yeah, let's get right down to it. First match of the night, we have Bam Bam Bigelow and Erwin R. Shyster, the IRS, with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, taking on the Headshrinkers of Fatu and Samu. And then we have Alpha and Lou Albano out there at ringside. So yeah, this was cool. I mean, it really just showcases how this family, this Samoan family, even dating back then, just had such a history with the WWE. And yeah, I thought Rikishi and Samu, I thought they looked really good here. You know, you saw some really good super kicks from them, lots of splashes off the top rope, just really solid action. IRS actually got a lot of heat here. So actually ends up going to a disqualification finish, as you had all the managers out there at ringside. But you know, it was good because it was good heat for DiBiase. DiBiase was all over this show. This might have been the highlight of his career, you know, from a non-wrestling standpoint. So after the injuries, you know, he would do these things. He would bring in these guys, and you would sell out to the $1 Million Man. It became, you know, definitely the top heel storyline. During the infant stages of Monday Night Raw, you know, just selling out to DiBiase, as we saw numerous guys sell out to the $1 Million Man in the mid-90s. Okay, so next up we have Alundra Blayze defending the Women's Championship against Bull Nakano, who's actually representing Japan here. I gotta say, I thought this was good. I thought this was really good stuff. Different, had a really different feel. It almost had like an 80s type of feel to it. I thought Bull Nakano was actually a really good character. She was really interesting. I wouldn't say she was a great wrestler, but she was definitely engaging. And Alundra Blayze was just, you know, for that time, I gotta say, just had a unique look. And just, tall, athletic, and just very, very fluid in the ring. I mean, I just thought she was really good from a fundamental standpoint. So she actually beats Bull Nakano with a beautiful German suplex out of nowhere. So, and fans are going crazy. Fans are really into this. I mean, it really just kind of proved that the women's division was pretty solid. I would say that these two women are a lot better than multiple women on the WWE and AEW rosters right now. So definitely good stuff. Definitely not the worst thing of the night. And then next up for the Intercontinental Championship, we got Diesel defending the Intercontinental title against Razor Ramon. So Diesel's out there with Sean. Diesel and Sean cut a promo with Todd Pettengill. Sean was acting really cocky. You could just definitely tell Sean didn't have the stress level that he normally would because he wasn't going to wrestle. And that's like my biggest gripe with the show. I mean, Bret's the best wrestler on the roster, but Shawn, you could argue, is the best sports entertainer, the best performer. And how do you have the second biggest show of the year and not have Shawn Michaels involved in a match? I was thinking about it. I think what I would have preferred, looking back on it, and I'm just a fan of biggest show of the year, you got to empty the tank. That's all I'm saying here. So I'm not saying that the match was bad. I actually thought Razor and Diesel was really good. It was one of Diesel's best matches I've ever seen. But I would have rather went with the Click match for this show. Diesel and Shawn versus Razor and 1-2-3 Kid. I think they had that match a couple weeks later at a house show. I think the name of the show is, oh man, I forget the name. It's like Action Zone or some shit like that. I think I actually had it in my top 10 most underrated matches of all time. That match was incredible. So I wish that had happened at SummerSlam, but Shawn definitely wasn't injured here. I know he had a knee injury at King of the Ring, but here he was bumping like a bitch. I mean, he was jumping off of the steel steps, clotheslining Razor Ramon out of nowhere. Razor actually bitch slapped him, and Shawn went flying. So there's no way that Shawn was faking an injury or had an injury here. I definitely think he could have went. But I think what they went for here, they wanted to tell the story of the split. They wanted to, make it feel very taboo, with Shawn actually costing Diesel the Intercontinental Championship, while both of them are actually the tag team champions. A scenario you had never really seen, play out before. So I think that was the intrigue here. But I got to say, Razor and Diesel look good. This is when they were hungry. There was no guaranteed money at this time. So I think both guys looked really, really good. Razor actually had some really nice comebacks here. Diesel had some really nice, just big boots out of nowhere to stop Razor's momentum. I thought the crowd was incredible here. The crowd was going crazy on the bulldog that Razor Ramon hit to Diesel here. So they did a lot of good stuff. And then, if you don't know who Walter Payton is, he's actually a running back. He was a running back for the Chicago Bears. I think he might have been on that 85 team, which some people still think had the greatest defense of all time. But Walter Payton was a running back. Shawn was actually calling him a munchkin. Running backs can be short because you're just running the football. You don't necessarily have to see over the defense. So a lot of running backs are particularly short, but very fast. And so Walter Payton is definitely a household name, and a pretty smart move too. I guess Vince wanted to, put him in the mix here, to sell more tickets in Chicago, and it definitely looks like it paid off. So yeah, and then the ending came when Shawn and Walter Payton were doing like a tug of war over the tag team titles, and then Earl Hebner got in the way, and Earl was like jawing with Walter Payton. And then behind the referee's back, Shawn actually tries to super kick Razor. Razor gets out of the way. He ends up super kicking Diesel. That leads to Razor actually pinning Diesel to win the Intercontinental Championship for the second time. So, yeah, I definitely think you could argue that Razor Ramon is one of the best, if not the best, Intercontinental champions ever. I just feel like, he never won the WWF Championship, but he really did, elevate the IC title. So he would definitely be in contention along with a guy like Mr. Perfect. Yeah, but good stuff there. Definitely the second best match of the night. I would have preferred Shawn to be involved in something that was a little bit more official, but you definitely take it. I definitely thought it was good stuff between Razor and Diesel. And at this time, this is when Diesel was actually coming down to the ring with just the Diesel truck sounds. Like they didn't give him that blues music yet. So I actually thought it really worked as a heel. So, all right. So next up we have Tatanka taking on Lex Luger. This was kept very, very short. So we got a backstage segment with, Tatanka just, crucifying Luger for, selling out, and, just kind of adamant that, you're selling out. The proof is in the pudding. And, then the fans really turned on both of them. They turned on Luger because they thought he was going to sell out. They were turning on Tatanka because, you just couldn't trust him. They thought, maybe he's being manipulative in this situation. And he definitely was. So Tatanka actually sells out to Ted DiBiase here. I thought the match was fine while it lasted. It was tough to get into. It was kept very short. The fans were just not into either guy here. But I think that's the reaction that they wanted. If they wanted Tatanka to turn heel, I think the fans bought into it. As soon as he came out, you heard a lot of boos for Tatanka. But, I think Luger is a hell of an athlete. Like, the more and more I watch him, the more and more he reminds me of a guy like Bill Goldberg. A little bit raw, but, just a powerhouse. And I actually thought Luger looked really good here for the amount of time that it lasted. So DiBiase actually comes out with a bag full of money. He's trying to distract Luger. Then Tatanka actually schoolboys him. And then DiBiase just starts throwing money in Luger's face. And then Tatanka just starts beating him down. And yeah, it was quite the swerve. Some of the fans seemed like they knew it. Some of the fans legitimately looked surprised by it, and Tatanka just got a ton of heat. So these are just two gimmicks that I just don't think were really working out at the time. So you had Tatanka playing up this Native American gimmick, and then Lex Luger's supposed to be the American hero. I just don't think either gimmick really, got over the way Vince wanted. So you just saw a little bit of a change in direction. I think they wanted to give Luger that shot of sympathy to see where it would go from here, and it really didn't. I don't think it really went anywhere, as he found himself in WCW about a year later. So, and then next up, we got Jeff Jarrett taking on Mabel. This is a hip hop versus country match. All right, so I did want to make this point. I really think. I mean, there's been a few situations where guys were able to make it work. John Cena would be the best example of, making hip hop and wrestling work. But for the most part, I don't think either two mix. I mean, all you have to do is look at the countdown hip hop videos I upload, and just the lack of interest compared to the WWE videos is just very evident. So, but there were on special occasions where rap and wrestling would work. I don't think Mabel was one of those situations. Vince was trying to sell the fact that he loved hip hop. He said, if it's good, I like it. I'll listen to it if it's good. So, I mean, you saw a little bit more of a personal feud with Mr. Perfect, and I think in Master P, once they got to WCW, when Mr. Perfect was doing the rap is crap thing. So that was probably a little bit more, I think they took it to another level than this right here. But yeah, I mean, Jarrett's definitely not going to do a podcast about this match. I know he did one for SummerSlam 98 and 99. There's just not a lot here to really talk about. I thought Jarrett actually made Mabel look good here. It was nice, short, and sweet. It wasn't like the fans were turning on the match and chanting ECW here. It was actually quite enjoyable for the amount of time that it went. Mabel made one mistake where he tried to do a senton to Jarrett. Jarrett gets out of the way, and then he schoolboys him for the victory. So yeah, a pleasure to watch. I got to say, it was pretty entertaining. It wasn't bad. Okay, next up, we have Bret Hart versus Owen Hart for the WWF Championship, the steel cage match. So this is what everyone's... this is why we're here. This is the main reason to check out the show. So let's talk about Meltzer first. I believe this is one of the few matches that Meltzer gave 5 stars to with the WWF in the 90s. So I think there's only 3 of them. I think it's the steel cage match, the ladder match from WrestleMania 10, and the Hell in a Cell match with Taker and Shawn. I think those are the only 3 matches he gave 5 stars. I don't think he gave 5 stars to the WrestleMania 10 Bret and Owen match. So I love the WrestleMania 10 match a lot better. I think it's a better representation of what Bret and Owen can do together. I think the steel cage match is great. For my personal taste, I would have preferred the rematch to just be one-on-one. I would have even preferred a 2 out of 3 falls match. I just think when you got wrestlers this good, I just think you need to let them wrestle. I think the steel cage stipulation is, it was its own story. It really wasn't the best showcase of Bret and Owen from a wrestling aspect. But that's not to say that the steel cage match wasn't a great story. It really was. And I really do feel like this is one match where, you really need to go with someone's opinion about this match that saw the pay-per-view live. Like, I'm assuming Meltzer saw it live, so I think his rating really speaks for itself. But if anyone was able to see this live, not knowing the winner, I think everyone knows that Owen Hart never won the title. So it's a little bit tougher to get into. I think with all the escapes from the cage, which were really well done. The Owen looked relentless, trying to stop Bret from going out of the cage. There was so many near escapes over the cage that it was really an engaging story. But I think to fully appreciate it, this is one of those matches where you needed to either be there live or watch it live on pay-per-view without knowing the result. I'll definitely say that about it. And, the funny thing is, I think a lot of people bought that steel cage match DVD. When that came out, this was the first time a lot of people were exposed to this steel cage match, and it was called Bloodbath. But the funny thing was, there was no blood in this match. So this, because of the stipulation, this was a different cage match. So you couldn't win by pinfall or submission. The only way you could win was just by escaping the cage. So that totally, made you forget that, blood should have been involved here. It's brother versus brother. Bret was very adamant that, he didn't hate Owen. He just felt sorry for him. He actually did say that. And CM Punk actually did steal that line from Bret, which he used at the Summer of Punk when he did win the title. So that was really interesting. But yeah, no blood. I don't think anyone wanted to see two brothers bleed here. And then on top of that, because of the stipulation, it just didn't make sense within the context of the match to start making one of the other guys bleed. So I think that's what makes it really special. I think that's what makes it really stand out. And yeah, but overall, though, I like I said, man, I would have preferred a straight up one-on-one wrestling match. But for what they gave us here, I still thought it was awesome stuff. You had the whole Hart family at ringside. You had a British Bulldog out there. You had Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So the main reason it was a steel cage was to keep the Anvil out of the match. So Anvil actually screwed Bret at King of the Ring, where he interfered, and then the championship match ended up being a disqualification, and he actually helped Owen beat Ramon to win the King of the Ring. So they just wanted to have Jim the Anvil Neidhart not be a factor. So so if you want to see why there was a reason why it was a cage match, it would be Jim the Anvil Neidhart, just to keep the animal out of the ring. So, but yeah, the work here was incredible, though. Like I was saying, man, Owen was ruthless here. As soon as Bret got into the cage, he was like an animal smelling blood. I mean, there were so many times where Bret was trying to escape, and then you thought Owen's knee was shot, and Owen would just, come out of nowhere and just stop Bret from getting out of the cage. So really, if you want to see near escapes from the cage, this match has it all. They really did a good job with that. I thought some of the spots were, Owen actually starts, trash talking to the camera, saying that he's going to, break Bret's leg with the sharpshooter, so he's not going to be able to walk outside of the cage, and the title's going to be his. I thought that was great from Owen, the sharpshooter, and the emotion that he showed talking to the camera. I thought that was really good. And then obviously the biggest bump in the match, probably one of the biggest bumps in the history of the company up to that point. They're actually by the right side of the turnbuckle. They go all the way up to the top of the cage. Bret actually superplexes Owen off the top of the cage. And Bret said that he really had to do a good job of protecting Owen on the way down. And you got to remember, at that time, the rings were not reinforced. They weren't as smooth as they were, nowadays. Like, apparently after Vince started taking bumps, he wanted to get the ring format changed so the bumps wouldn't be as brutal on him. So at this particular time, a lot of the wrestlers said that it was a lot harder to bump on that mat back then, because there just wasn't as much give back then. So that's something else to keep in mind there. But yeah, really, really good match. I mean, yeah, lots of Russian leg sweeps. The flare bump off the top of the rope after some of the breakups from getting Bret or Owen out of the cage. The match really does have a lot of drama to it. And there's no referee inside the cage. So I think that actually gave them more of a playground to really work with there. So a lot of times these steel cage matches, and now Sean definitely agrees with this too, like the steel cage match can really limit what you can do. But for this particular match, there's no referee in there. There's just a referee outside the ring. So, the only way to win is just by escaping the cage. And, the finish came off great. They're basically, both on the way down, and Owen gets his boot stuck in the middle of the cage. And this was when they had that blue cage with those big squares, so you could actually fit a whole boot or a shoe in the middle of the cage. And Owen got his foot stuck, and then Bret jumps down. And yeah, really, really good ending. I get why this wasn't the main event. They did this whole Hart Foundation or Hart family beatdown afterwards. So Jim the Anvil Neidhart actually clotheslines Davey and Diana over the top rope, and Jim actually gets into the cage, locks it, and then they do the beatdown on Bret, and then eventually British Bulldog jumps over the top of the cage to get into the match. So kind of ends with a lot of Hart family drama. Wasn't a huge fan of it. I actually wasn't even a huge fan of the Owen and Jim the Anvil Neidhart promo in the post-match, but what it really did was it really kind of set the tone and kind of a foreshadowing of all the turmoil that would take place within this family throughout the rest of the 90s. So, if you want to look at it from a Shakespearean standpoint, it really does have a lot of foreshadowing there. I kind of wish Bret got to enjoy the moment and just, pose with the championship and have this be the main event. But we actually got Undertaker and Undertaker in the main event. Okay, and now the main event, we have Paul Bearer's Undertaker versus Ted DiBiase's Undertaker. So yeah, Undertaker had been gone for a while. He had the match with Yokozuna, the casket match where he ascended to the heavens. So you weren't able to see the real Undertaker until this match right here. And Ted DiBiase had the fake Undertaker, the imposter Undertaker. I believe his name was actually Brian Lee. Yeah, I don't think he looked too good in this match. I know he used to be in ECW a little bit after this. I think he actually had a Stairway to Hell match as Brian Lee a little bit after this. But yeah, I mean, this might have been the worst main event in SummerSlam history. It's a little dark for SummerSlam too. I mean, the poster actually has on it "So hot that it's scary," but I get it. But yeah, for SummerSlam, this is too dark of a main event. See, I think this would have worked a little bit better if you had this in your house. I think for SummerSlam, I get why they did it, though. It's the return of The Undertaker. So positives here. I think it was a great match for Mark Calloway. I think this is what he needed. I think the match really proves that, they picked the right guy to be The Undertaker. I'll definitely say that because, Brian Lee just couldn't replicate what The Undertaker did. So you couldn't really make the argument after this that, you could just have anybody play The Undertaker, or you could have anyone play Stone Cold Steve Austin and you could have the same amount of success. So no, it's not true. Undertaker was one of a kind. There's nobody that could have played it, as well as the real Undertaker, Mark Calloway. So I think it was really good for The Undertaker's ego. And yeah, I think this type of match would have really benefited Ultimate Warrior because, there was a lot of guys saying, there was like a million Ultimate Warriors when there really wasn't. There was only one Jim Hellwig. So it would have been cool to see an Ultimate Warrior versus Ultimate Warrior match, now that I think about it. So yeah, I was a huge fan of the Superman versus Evil Superman from Superman 3. You basically had Christopher Reeve acting as two guys in the same scene. So that was really cool. But it was cool to see the evil Undertaker. I get what they were doing here, but Taker, the original Undertaker, just looked so tall, so athletic, so crisp. The other guy just looked slow, lethargic, and just not quite ready for prime time. And at the same time, like when you're not that experienced, like Brian Lee at the time, like I don't know how experienced he was, but if you're not really at the top of your game, like the Undertaker's just a tough guy to really, execute maneuvers against. It's just really tough. But yeah, it pretty much ends with Taker doing 3 consecutive tombstones in a row. I could think this is one of the first times we saw someone actually counter a tombstone into a tombstone. So kind of a precursor to some of the work that Undertaker and Kane would do. But yeah, Kane would end up being a much better foe for the Undertaker than the imposter Undertaker. I think they actually had an imposter Kane, back in like 2006. But yeah, not a huge fan of the main event, but was definitely necessary. They also had some comedy stuff involved as well, where Leslie Nielsen, I think he was promoting the new Naked Gun movie. This is after the OJ incident, so I'm not sure if maybe that's why they didn't announce that they were promoting Naked Gun. But, they had these comedy sketches with Leslie Nielsen trying to find the real Undertaker, but really didn't care for it. Macho Man was actually the host of SummerSlam. Something felt really odd about it. It just felt really weird. I really didn't enjoy Savage as the host here. It just seemed really out of place, but I guess he was pretty much on the way out. But yeah, with this show right here, this is kind of an example of a show where, Jericho stated this at the time. WWF was like, you had Bret Hart, you had Owen Hart, you had the Shawn Michaels match, and other than that, there just really wasn't a lot to get excited about. And I think this show is really indicative of that comment from Jericho. So you might be able to argue that WCW in 1994 had a little bit more depth than WWE, but you still had Bret, you still had Shawn, you still had Owen. I really enjoyed the Lex Luger Tatanka storyline stuff with DiBiase. I did enjoy that. The women's match is actually really good. It was short, it was sweet. It just felt like there definitely could have been more here. I think not having Shawn Michaels wrestle on the show with 1, 2, 3 Kid. I definitely think if you had that click match at SummerSlam, I think this would have been a much more memorable show. It's pretty much a 2-match show, but the cage match. Dave Meltzer gave that 5 stars. One of the few matches in WWF history to get 5 stars. There's not many of them, so this is one of them. So I think that really goes a long way. So it's definitely worth checking out just for that steel cage match. I wish Owen Hart had won the title. And I really, even if Owen didn't win the title, it always irks me that they never went back to Bret versus Owen at WrestleMania 11, because the Survivor Series 94 match with Backlund beautifully sets up a return Bret and Owen match, either for the championship or just a grudge match at WrestleMania. And it always bothers me that they settle for that Bob Backlund match with Piper as a special guest referee. But yeah, it was pretty cool. The cage match was something different, but I really prefer the WrestleMania 10 match over this. But it was still a great night for Owen, a great night for Bret. So hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I'm out. All right.